again everyone, it's Matt Long with D&D Gunsmith. I wanted to make a part 2, kind of a follow-up to my original VR-80 reliability video, kind of share some of the things that we had learned over the course of a successful season as well as through the whole VR-80 community. Kind of wanted to put all the information in one place. Beginning a lot of messages on the first video that I made, so with all the new things that we had learned, I figured it would be about time to make another one and update it. Keep in mind that this video is for the competition tuning of the VR-80 shotgun. So, we're using light loads and only sticking to the light piston. On to the initial cleaning of your VR-80. Rock Island has a pretty good video on their website of how to properly disassemble and reassemble the VR-80. I would recommend watching that if you're not familiar with it. But the very first thing that you're going to notice is that your VR-80 is covered in all kinds of nasty, greasy packing oil. You're going to want to get every bit of that off of the gun. That means that the entire gun's going to have to come apart. The bolt, barrel comes out to get the bolt out. You want to disassemble the entire buffer system. You also want to do the same thing and degrease all of your magazines. After that, the proper lubrication points on this gun, when you reassemble it, are going to be the buffer system very lightly. You're going to want to lubricate the bolt as you would a normal shotgun bolt. And you're going to want to treat this just like a normal gas piston system. Some people have a lot of success with very light oil and some people don't. If you choose to lubricate this portion of the gun, make sure that you only use very, very light oil. Some key areas of wear that we have found. The lug on the upper receiver that centers these two pins. You want to definitely make sure to keep a little bit of oil on here. Inside the upper receiver, obviously where the bolt is riding, there's 2 tracks. You're going to also want to keep some lubricant in here, as well as inside the ejector. You notice it's spring-loaded. I like to put a little drop just down in there to keep the mechanism floating nice. We've had success with multiple different lubricants. We like to use Slip 2000. Others run Lucas oil, and others around here are also using Super QCG. They all work very well. They all have something in common, though, is that they are thin, so you don't need to go crazy on the oil. Just one tip there. Before we get into break-in, while we have the handguard and the piston system apart, I wanted to point something out. The size of the gas holes. There's 3 of them located right around this lower ring, and we found them ranging anywhere from 105 thousandths to 112 thousandths out of the Rock Island factory. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it as far as serial number or vintage or anything like that, but we do notice that they do not run period at 105 thousandths. They do, however, seem to run great at the 112 thousandths. We had found 116 thousandths or the number 32 drill bit, as you know, to work very well for super, super light gamer loads. At this time, you could try to measure these, and all you'll need is a simple drill index. Just keep pulling drill bits out until you find one that fits nice and tight, and that'll tell you the size of the hole. If you have the 105 thousandths, I would recommend going first to 112. If it still doesn't run the way you would like at 112 after 300 to 500 rounds, then maybe consider the 116 option. With the initial cleaning out of the way, you're ready to break it in. We recommend using about 200 rounds of 1300 foot per second or hotter loads. The reason we say this is we want it to fully cycle the gun no matter what. It has to wear in all the components, it has to wear in all the high spots, it has to just fully wear in. After about the first 100 rounds of it, it should really start running more reliably for you. Really watch how it's behaving. Watch where it's ejecting. Is it dribbling the shells out of the gun, or is it spitting them 3 to 5 feet? After about the first 100 to 120 rounds, it really should start being reliable for you. If it's still not, try running about 10 to 20, cheap hunting slugs through it. Really try to cycle everything really hard on it and seat everything in. But 200 of these really hot double A's, the Super Sport 1300 foot per second, seem to do the trick for everybody. So with the piston system disassembled, I've also had a lot of questions on how to get all this carbon off of the piston and off of the barrel. What I had found worked really, really well, and I got this idea because people were telling me they were using red Scotch-Brite on this, and that is not the right thing to use. Red Scotch-Brite removes metal. I like to use this kitchen thing, and I call it the SpongeBob. It'll be a yellow back. It's used for kitchen, for cleaning dishes. But the important thing is it will take off the carbon. It won't touch the metal. This really gets it clean with a couple drops of oil on it. You'll remove everything off. This thing will look like brand new. Key areas to look at. The piston on the inside and outside. You're going to want to make sure that these channels are nice and sharp. You can feel the edges. There's no carbon fouling built up. Another key area to consider is the inside of this cylinder has an O-ring. It's very, very small, but you want to make sure there's no nicks in it. You also want to make sure that it's not missing when you put this back together. I like to just wipe a small film of oil on the O-ring so that it slips over these two locking piston rings a little bit easier and doesn't have a chance to nick. With regard to buffer springs and buffers, there's not a lot of options currently out there for us. There's the stock buffer spring, which I'm currently running with no issues. The tack-on flat wire spring seems to be very popular and a lot of people really like it. It's a little bit stiffer than the stock spring I had found, but there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people are really getting creative and playing with AR-15 carbine buffer springs. They trim up to 6 coils off of them initially to get the length right, and then you can kind of keep trimming them back after that to tune the ejection for the ammo that you're running. As far as buffers themselves, there's the stock aluminum slug buffer, and then there's also the tack-on dampened buffer, which I'm running about 2,500 rounds in with no issues whatsoever on it. Now I want to give everyone my 30,000 foot take on malfunction diagnostics. The very first one I want to cover is a failure to cycle. Failure to cycle would be caused by too small of gas ports, an improperly broken in gun, too weak of ammo, or just plain a dirty gun that can no longer cycle properly. Telltale sign would be you fire a shot, nothing happens, pull the bolt back, and a dead shell comes out of the chamber, or a spent shell would come out of the chamber. The very next malfunction would be a short stroke, and I like to call this the death jam, is what we call it amongst my team. That is where the shell will partially feed. The gun is either under gas, you got a weak load of ammo, or the gas holes are just too small for the ammo you're trying to run. The bolt will not fully cycle and not properly, it'll eject, but it won't properly grab the next round. And you'll get the next round up on a 45-degree angle, and the only way to clear it out is to yank the mag. And even the mag will sometimes be stuck. This is the very worst one that you can possibly get. The next one would be a partial ejection. And a partial ejection would just be the shell is, you shoot and the shell is stuck at holding the bolt open, the spent shell. This would be caused by being undergassed, mainly, or too weak of ammo, which would also be the same thing, too tight of buffer spring. Something is stopping the bolt, just think of how it's mechanically working, something is stopping it from kicking back hard enough to throw the shell. The very last one would be a failure to feed. And the failure to feed would basically be you pull the trigger, break your shot, you try to break the next shot, and you click. When you cycle, nothing's in the chamber, it's just empty. That is caused by either too hot of ammo, you're overrunning the magazine, the bolt is coming back too fast, the magazine doesn't have enough time to feed, or it's a dirty magazine altogether, or an improperly broken in magazine. But that's my 30,000 foot view on it. With regard to our current compensator options, we basically have 3 on the market right now. We have the Rock Island Long Comp, the Rock Island Short Comp, and the TACOM Comp. The Rock Island comps seem to do a little bit better of a job of recoil reduction. I don't really notice any difference between the long and short comp than the TACOM one does. However, the TACOM comp does a much better job of holding your pattern nice and tight and not affecting that at all. Myself, I'm running a Rock Island Long Comp with the second baffle chopped off and slightly modified the internal baffles. The reason I did this was just to simply try to mitigate my pattern spreading out. We have some current options that I've been hearing through the grapevine through Limcat Custom Guns as well as Tooth and Nail, and I'm sure Dissident Arms is going to come out with something, being how popular the Rock Island has gotten over the last year. So just keep an eye out for other things, and